Listen, the Detroit Lions, they have, I don't want to call it a dilemma. I'm hoping that this is just push to start. It's just, hey, get it done. Because the better you draft, the more you're going to have to make the decisions of what players you do choose to cash out on. This one, to me, is a no-brainer. Kerby Joseph states that he wants to be a lifelong Lion. Yes. And you know what? When we drop that across socials, man, that thing collectively is already well past 1 million views and engagements. Just because of what and who Kerby Joseph has been. And I believe since he's entered the league, leading the league in interceptions?
17 in his first 3 seasons. I think that leads the league over the last 3.
Yeah, so we already know what Kerby is. Not just a ball hog, but somebody who we've routinely now over the last couple of years see take touchdowns away from teams that's driven down against a defense that's been largely porous. But what's the priority level as it relates to re-signing a Kerby Joseph, because or extending a Kerby Joseph, because that price tag is going to be a pretty one.
Yeah, I think the way that this team is constructed as of right now, it's high. I will give you one caveat. If, and I don't think this is going to happen, if the Lions were to say, shock us all and make a Trey Hendrickson trade and extend him, then we could have those conversations about Kerby Joseph and whether you just let it play out and let him walk. But I don't think that's going to happen. And the Lions haven't brought in a high-priced edge. So I think you really need Kerby Joseph for this team. And the reality is, when it comes to Kerby Joseph, is he earned a contract. This year, he was an absolute revelation. And it's not to say that he wasn't always a ball hawk, but this season, who would have seen him being a first-team All-Pro safety? Who would have seen him being objectively the best safety in the NFL? I don't think anyone would have, but he did it.
Well, Spinney did, but...
Well, okay, first-team All-Pro.
Yeah, he didn't call that, but he said he would lead the league in interceptions.
He did.
I thought he had a shot. I remember when we broke it down, we had the top 5 duos graphic, and it was a conversation that we thought they belonged in. And I remember at that time, that was what it was, though. We were talking about the strongest points and the strong suits of guys like Brian Branch, Kerby Joseph, and how the defensive line was going to put them in, and the additions to the secondary, with the defensive backs, was going to put them in a better position to really go out there and roam and do what they do best, and that's take the ball away and lay down some crushing hits that got the rest of the league crying. So I don't know if people thought maybe first team All-Pro and leading the league in interceptions, but it's definitely some bullish people about who they could be.
No, and for the record, I heard with my own ears Spenny say that he was going to lead the NFL in interceptions, and he was right. But for like the Shods and the Wheezies in the chat, no, you didn't. You did not say that Kerby Joseph was going to be the first team All-Pro safety. Know. It's very on brand for you two, by the way. To the shock of absolutely no one, Shod and Wheezy were claiming that they always saw Kerby Joseph as the first team All-Pro safety this year. But I digress. But this season, let me just repeat some numbers again. First team All-Pro, the PFF #1 ranked safety, #1 in the NFL in interceptions. And another way in which Kerby Joseph improved, which is underrated, we all know that this year he was a very good tackler. He's good against the run. He just gets people on the ground. This season, he only had a 6% missed tackle rate, whereas previous career high was 12. So Kerby Joseph making improvements. Like, he's always been a heck of a ball hawk. I know that we as fans will always appreciate him for what he did to Aaron Rodgers in the 2022 final game at Lambeau, and certainly what he did in 2023 with the 4 interceptions. And we also love the fact that Kerby Joseph has been remarkably durable. In 3 seasons, he's only missed 2 games. And we know on this Lions defense, after what happened last year, we need a season. They need a season as a team, and we need a season as fans in which, the injury bug doesn't bite us as much. So with all of that being said, I want him to be extended if this is the way that the team is going to be currently constructed, because even though his first 2 seasons were a little bit more up and down, he struggled in a lot of ways. No matter what the season, he's always been a ball hawk, and he's always played damn near every single game. And this year, he took that leap. If I were Brad Holmes, what I would offer Kerby Joseph, 4 years, $80 million. That would make Kerby Joseph in an AAV level the second highest paid safety in the NFL after Antoine Winfield Jr. And I think 4 years, $80 million as a starting point is what I would offer Kerby, because I think he's earned it.
And I see Jesse Adams in the chat. I think they're going to sign Kerby back. I love Kerby, but at the same time, I can see them maybe letting him walk because they won't want to overpay for a safety. I mean, Brad did get him in the 3rd. And when I think about Kerby Joseph and the type of impact he has on the field, it's a little bit different than just going out there and playing the position, which there are some other talented safeties in the league that play the position well. Some out there as well in Green Bay Packer land. I'm not going to mention his name. He got popped for talking during the season, and it is what it is. We'll just leave it that way. But Kerby Joseph, to me, was a player that struck fear in the opponents. Mm-hmm. They would want to run their mouth when the cameras were going, and when Kerby would step on the field, all of a sudden acting like, "Oh, what's going on? What?" Mm-hmm. He was the one that got people out here crying. Him and Anzo, right? They're the ones that got little people crying. Tucker Kraft. Well, yeah, we'll mention him, but the other safety, he gets no time on here. I'm so glad that he backed down. That last interview with Rigo, and he was like, "I ain't got nothing else to say." I was like, good. And that's, to me, what it was. I saw Kerby was a killer. These other safeties are just really good safeties. Yeah. And that, to me, is kind of what the difference is with Kerby Joseph. It's like I don't want any of my wide receivers running against him. I don't want them catching the ball in the middle of the field or even having to go out there and challenge against a Kerby Joseph. I liked a lot of the intrinsic things he did, obviously the culture that he set, and you don't want to cripple the way that you build your team from long-term success. But I do believe even just beyond the stats, there was just a different level of dog that Kerby Joseph was out there on that field, and how those other players have responded to it, cried about it, talked about it. Matthew Stafford famously running up. And when you think about the fact that we talk about the shot callers on this team, go back to the beginning of the season when they played the cute little game where they're holding up the signs and everybody else is having fun. Kerby Joseph was looking at these logos and having PTSD, like, no, I'm effing people up this season. Mm-hmm. And he called it. And each time he beat one of them teams, he would post that to his stories, him holding up the sign of the Rams, first game of the season. So it's just like, I kind of like that, man. And the ability to be able to have that in that secondary room, man, that's where I'm like, you know what, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everything that he does, he backs it up. And he's gained so much of a reputation that people want to call him dirty because he goes out there, he handles his business. But just for the record, he is far from dirty. All the hits that he has laid on people have been clean hits, hasn't been fined, hasn't been flagged really. So Kerby Joseph, he's done everything in his power to become more of a complete safety in this league. And you got to give him credit for that because he's improved year by year by year. But this last season was really like a step up in, okay, he might be the best safety in the league type conversation. And I think the Lions value what he brings to the table attitude-wise and just, how he plays on the field. And I can definitely see him getting extended. I think he's earned it at this point. And for all the people that want us to go out there and spend all that cap space. This is why you save cap space. So you can extend guys like this because we already have a lot of stars in our locker room already. And for the people that think, we got over 50 million in cap space, let's just spend it all until like the last 2 or 3 million. It doesn't work like that. They want to be able to preserve some money so they can roll over some cap and be able to extend their guys. I don't know exactly how much cap gets rolled over, but that plays a big factor into why they don't spend so much in free agency. But I think Kerby Joseph does get extended.
Man, I see a couple of things in the chat, and there.
You see some stuff too, huh?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of, I would say, conflicting ideas, which is fine, by the way. I certainly like that. There's one, and I lost it, but I will try to remember it. That basically said, I think it was IT Hips that said, you can't make the best safety in the NFL the second highest paid safety.
I did.
The second highest paid safety. So
the real K77.
The real K77. My
Brian
fault.
Needs to pay that, man.
I mean, there is a limit to how far that I would go. I don't know if I would give him, for example, 4 years at 100, but I don't think that that's necessarily what he is going to ask for, what he is going to ultimately get. And I see another one that says, basically paying a safety $20 million a year is overkill given who else you have to sign. And I think as long as there's no other big moves this offseason, which I think at this point there isn't, I think you can afford to pay Kerby Joseph $20 million a year, just given on what he's earned at this point. Because for 1 year, even though he wasn't always what he was last year, if Kerby Joseph continues to play at the level that he did last year for the duration of his contract, for 2 out of the 4 years, for 3 out of the 4 years, and the Lions ultimately bring home a Lombardi, then that's a steal. But of course, $20 million for a safety does seem a lot on the surface, considering there's only one other person in the NFL that does that. That's Antoine Winfield Jr. But I think Kerby has earned that just with the roster is constructed right now. I think you need Kerby Joseph patrolling the back end, especially when I think that there's some uncertainty with the pass rush outside of Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil.
Yeah, true that. And you know what? We know also that Kerby Joseph is still effective even if the pass rush is hit too. It's like when I see who he's been the last 2 years where we have largely all talked about we need more pass rush help. We're not getting home to the quarterback as much as we should, but whose play hasn't really been dictated or predicated based on that? Kerby Joseph's. Yep. And that's where it's like there's some of us a little bit different there because other safeties in the league, you hear their name more when the defense in front of them is just a little bit better in performing as well. But this was an interesting exchange. Phil, is Kerby anything without Brian Branch? I guess that's a fair question.
He was doing it before Brian Branch got here.
Burns responded, is Brian Branch anything without Kerb? Don't break that up. Keep them both.
This is just what I see. I think Brian Branch is a better player. Yeah. Personally, I think he's more all around. I think that he's the better of the duo. But last season, if Kerby Joseph is taking the ball away at the level that he was last year, then he's Ed Reed. And that's tantalizing, of course. Last season, and I get it, Ed Reed to me is the best to ever do it. But last season, Kerby Joseph literally, not figuratively, literally had an Ed Reed season. I think both of them would be good regardless of who plays beside them. But when it comes to Brian Branch, I understand the thought process that if Kerby Joseph were to ask for something insane, you could say, oh, we still have Brian Branch, we'll be okay. But we also look at the roster right now. There's not a lot of safety depth. They let Ife Melifonwu go. And to me, letting Ife Melifonwu go and letting him go to sign a 1-year, $4 million contract, that tells me that they're going to pay Kerby Joseph. Because you could make that argument, although I wouldn't, if Ife was still here, you could play hardball with a Kerby Joseph. But now you really can't because you don't have anybody. There's literally nobody on the roster to play safety right now besides Kerby Joseph and Brian Branch. I'm not saying Brad Holmes wouldn't make moves to mitigate that, but I think Kerby's getting re-signed. I think that's a high priority for the Lions. Whether you want it to be or not, I think it is.
I like that. That is definitely the kumbaya point there. And voice of reason. What up, though?
What's going on? I'm kind of in lockstep with Sam on this one. Just the simple fact that he is the highest rated player that we have right now. And I don't want to sit here and say there's a blank check for him, but I think there's a limit. I don't mind the $20 million. Honestly, our Spotrac has him at 4 years, 92. So, I mean, it's kind of not along those same lines as well, too. I would probably go anywhere from 85 to 90, if anything. But I definitely want him on this team. There's no way you sit here and just let this man walk. As much as he's done for this Lions team, there is no way possible. He's a fan favorite, and he wants to be here. So, once again, keep him here just like you did Tim Patrick.
You know what, JB? You're right. I didn't even look at Kerby Joseph's calculated market value because I didn't even know that they had those for players who are not free agents. But it's actually closer to 4 years, 93.
So you're kind of on the point in that 4 years, 93 would be a little bit of
a longer term deal. You can do a little more maneuvering as well in terms of you can add 4 years, you can restructure if you need to. So even if you pay him up front, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world.
Because you were saying 4 and 80, that 4 and 93, is that a little too rich for your blood?
I would rather do like 5 at 100 or 5 at 103 or 105 or something like that.
With some flexibility.
Yeah. But I can't say in one breath that Kerby Joseph had a literal Ed Reed season last year and then be like, $23 million a year is insane. It's not if he's that. I don't know if that's sustainable by anyone at this stage playing safety in the NFL. But Kerby Joseph, like I said, the two constants of Kerby Joseph's career is that he always plays and he takes the ball away. Those are two really important things when it comes to being a safety, even if as an all-around player, he wasn't what he was his third year, his first 2 years.
No, this was interesting, and I appreciate JB with that pull, the voice of reason with the potential market value for a guy like Kerby Joseph.
That was a great pull, JB.
Yeah, 4 for 93. I would go that extra year. What did we see even this offseason? We saw a lot of teams that are at the top of the league have some of their great and high-paid players restructure for the sake of the Super Bowl window. And that's where, if you know you have a guy that is willing to do that type of stuff, I think that it does bode better to say, you know what, we're going to lock you up with a base, financial incentive right now. And if we need to create some flexibility later to keep this Super Bowl window open, we can definitely do that. And that is what I do believe. When you listen to Kerby Joseph speak, when you hear the fact that he wants to be a lifelong Lion, then I do believe some of that also comes into mind. You have to know if this is what you're projecting to be, then you have to know that there's going to be give and take on both ways. And what we've seen from Brad Holmes is he will cash out on his guys. Mm-hmm. We've seen this already with Amon-Ra. We've seen this with Panay. Going to see this with Hutch. And if it's Kerby Joseph back here, we know he's going to cash out. And I do believe that as long as there's that flexibility on the back end, and that's where I agree with you as well, Flannel, maybe push that out to a 5th year to give yourself even more flexibility, give them a little bit more guaranteed money over a longer space of time, which sometimes you don't get those types of those deals, that type of long-term security in the league. So it's that give and take. And one thing we do know, we're in that trust in Brad Holmes mode, because we're talking about him tweaking a team that was 15-2 without some of its best players. Mm-hmm. That's the one caveat.
I've been doing some thinking on the fly since JB came through with that calculated market value for a Kerby Joseph. If I were to hear tomorrow that Kerby Joseph re-signed or was extended with the Lions for 4 years, 93, I wouldn't necessarily hate it. I would be worried. Here's what I would say. I would say that if you extend Kerby Joseph for 4 years, $93 million, and you hit on an edge rusher in the first round, I'm cool. I think that there's certainly a wild card with an edge rusher in the first round, especially if the Lions don't trade up, if they make the pick at a 28. But there's some options. As long as Brad Holmes has a draft this year in which a defensive player or two contributes at a high level in his rookie season, I think that if you want to pay Kerby Joseph 4 years, $93 million, I wouldn't necessarily hate that. Although, as I said, 4 years at 80 sounds about right to me. But I've used Spot Track as a reference before, and the 4 years 80 was just the Flannel Sam way. So I will trust what they have. But also, Kerby Joseph did say he wants to be a lifelong Lion, and $20 million AAV would make him the second highest paid safety in the NFL in terms of AAV. That's not peanuts. That's not crumbs.
Yep. And chat family as well. I want to know what you guys feel too. I see a couple people are putting in what they think they would do. I see some 20s. I see Super Bowl Kerby for 15 million tops. Let us know what you guys think.
Then you're not having Kerby.
You're not having Kerby. And I don't think
he got to get paid too. I understand he loves the city, and hopefully the culture plays a part, but he's gonna get paid.
I don't think he's taking a discount. I'm sorry.
No, I don't think if it is, it won't be a big discount.
And speaking of which, I saw you respond to Matt Broder in the chat. Shout out Malachi Starks draft pick incoming.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what's funny? I actually saw a mock draft which had the Lions picking Starks at 28. I wouldn't like it personally unless you were planning on letting Kerby Joseph walk, which I don't think that they are at this structure. But 4 years, 93, I said that I would accept it and be like, Brad, do your thing in the draft. But 4 years at 93, even saying it out loud is like, I'd like him to take just a little bit less. That would make Kerby Joseph the highest paid safety in the NFL by a pretty wide margin in terms of average annual value.
But this is why he's
the guaranteed money too on something like that.
This is why he's going into the draft for the edge rusher that we all want, because if you go out there and you pay a big name or a superstar, that's going to take away from the money that you can possibly pay guys down the road. And we are getting in that territory now to where you have to be careful with the moves that you make, because Hutch is on the line, Kerby is on the line, Gibbs will eventually be on the line, J-Mo. These are all guys that we hope to keep. Not to mention Brian Branch in another 2 years. So it's like, we have to plan for things like this, and this is why they're not going crazy in the free agent market.
He might have to lock them up early, because we know that cap space is going to continue to go up. And think about how well he's already helped himself by locking up Panay and Amon-Ra. So the one thing we do know is I do believe Brad Holmes is a little bit ahead of schedule. He's given himself the time to be able to make those decisions appropriately. When you talk about their young players and locking them up, they are actualized all pros.
Yeah.
So it's like when you think about it from that standpoint, what a menu that he has to be able to sit back and look at. He's locking up all pros. He's locking up some of the best players in all of the NFL, or at least making the decisions.
He didn't sign. He drafted these guys.
Dang, man. That's where it gets tough, because can he do it again then?
But this is where
who's to say he can't?
This is where
but that's where it's like, do you splash out if you could do it again?
Yeah, that is his greatest ability, is finding talent in the draft, bro.
That's fair, but this is where I have to go back to what I would have done if I were Brad Holmes. I know people are going to tune out already. This is why you're not Brad Holmes, yada, yada, yada. I think in the totality of the offseason, what would make me personally more comfortable about a Kerby Joseph deal, what I would have done is, you all know, I would have let Derek Barnes walk. I would have brought in Devin Bush. He got 3.2 with the Cleveland Browns, but hey, what do I know? And I probably would have just done the Kerby Joseph deal and offered 1 at 6 to Azeez Ojulari. I'm not saying that that's perfect. I'm not saying that Ojulari or Devin Bush would have even came here, but they're Azeez Ojulari and Devin Bush for a reason. I think if you would have offered them enough, they would have.
Yeah.
Again, Brad Holmes did what Brad Holmes does. We're now in a situation where 4 at 93 is a little bit iffy, no pun intended. But
maybe you just didn't view those guys as fits. That's fair. It is what it is, because they cheap, yes, but do they really fit what the Lions want to do? Probably not.
Maybe.
Super Bowl Cartier, and I'm sure that there's no bias here. Super Bowl. He says pay Kerby $18 million per year for 4 years right now.
I don't think that that's going to happen, because his value is the highest that it's ever been. I mean, he just came off of a first-team All-Pro season.
He's getting at 20.
If you can get him at 4 years, 18, if you're Brad Holmes, call up your wife, give her the best 2 minutes of your life, because you are definitely in the mood when you hear that, and sign him immediately. 4 years at 72, I would give anything for that. But the reason why I say that is because there is no chance. Kerby Joseph is a first-team All-Pro safety.
We can't be scared, about the money aspect of this. Like, we gotta have a line, and I'm pretty sure Brad Holmes has a line that he's willing to not go past. But you can't be scared in terms of extending your guys, and we do have to keep in consideration the cap is going up seemingly every year at this point too. So I do feel like the money will be there for everybody that's like, oh, we can't keep everybody. You can, maybe, as long as you don't lock yourself into bad contracts.
And you said it, the cap goes up every year. How much did it jump this year?
Was it like
20 million?
I think it was 20 million.
20 million? Talk. So it could jump up another 15 to 20 million and literally cover
last
one of
time
his
I
years.
checked, NFL ain't going nowhere. So last time I checked.
Kerby. You got it. He's getting the 20 AAV. You hear these safeties talking right now in the media. I feel like he's going to be that 20 AAV safety. The players, the Players Association, you think about what that safeties room is thinking about across the NFL. He gets the opportunity to move that needle up just a little bit more, especially when you're talking about the positions. And if some of these players wind up getting franchise tagged, the higher he pushes that AAV for safeties, the better it looks for all of them in contract negotiations or if they're franchise tagged.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a good problem to have. I will say that, because Kerby Joseph has well outperformed, I think, any of our expectations, especially when he was drafted as a third-round pick. But the only thing is, we're seeing right now, how is Brad Holmes going to manage re-signing his own guys and being under the cap versus free agents and all that jazz. So far, he's made some re-signings that I think have been nice, like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Penei Sewell, Lee McNeil, Jared Goff. He's got a lot more, though.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Hey, let's try. Oh, the legend is on the line.
The legend is on the line. And before we go to break, got to shout out to Super Chat before we get into it with Rod.
Get those Super Chats
$5 from Burn. He said, this was at when we came back from break.
Oh, God,
I won't hear Don Kelly slander. That man was so good at hitting fly balls. Jim had him pinch hit for a sack walk-off in a playoff game.
Great.
Flannel is sick, dog.
Stop that. Let that hate out your heart, Flannel.
Do.
Let that hate out your heart, man. Sorry.
He's trying.
He not.
How do you feel about Prince Fielder? How do any of you who nut themselves over Don Kelly's name feel about Prince Fielder?